today what we are going to do is we are going to do soap adapter basically, and we are going to, like I was saying, my efforts will be that we always keep on building the existing concepts. So, for example, we did content modifier first, and then we did request reply, and then along with request reply we used a simple http service which was a rest based service, right? Now we'll do soap service with request reply. So as we're doing any kind of service or api, we use a particular adapter, right? So for example, for all rest based services we typically use http adapter, but for soap specifically we have a specialized adapter within SAP. Now, just to give you a little bit background, am I sharing my screen?
No.
Oh, okay. One second. Hmm, where did it go? Okay. Um, can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. So let's look at what is, just to build a little bit of concept. What is SOAP protocol, right? So, see, right now you will face. Even I was still very recently facing confusion when I was just preparing for this. I even got confused that what is the real difference between a web service or an API, right? So you'll keep hearing these words. These days, people do not use web service very often, but APIs are used very frequently since many years now, 2 to 3 years at least, or maybe more. Okay, so what is the difference, right? So web services, see, initially, ultimately, both are the same things. What both of them do is like a function, right? In your development area, also, you would be seeing, like in ABAP, we have something called as a function module. So it's very simple. A web service is something where you give an input, it gives you an output after doing something on it. Like it may give you the output as is, in which case it's not really doing anything. But most likely it will do some massaging on it, do some calculation, complex or simple, and then will give you output, right? That is a typical, in very generic word, a definition of a function. A web service is the same. Now, how did web service came into picture, right? So when people designed, of course, a web service, initially, so SOAP is one of the oldest protocol, right? All of these are protocols, right? Protocol is, I hope you know, but just to revise, protocol is something which tells you the basic rules, fundamental rules under which you should do some task, right? So, for example, now I am going to send data from A to B. So I should send the data in, let's say, a particular format. I should use this connection, right, and so on, so forth. So that is like a protocol. So SOAP is one of the protocol. HTTP is one of the protocol, right? So SOAP is the SOAP actually created a lot of revolution. There are entire middlewares and entire integration platforms just created based on the SOAP, this thing, because it was one of the earliest protocol which introduced integration to us, right? So what is SOAP protocol? So SOAP protocol, obviously the definition is simple object access protocol. It's a messaging protocol, right, for exchanging structured information. Now the key word here is structured information, right? So when you exchange information using SOAP protocol, your data should be in a particular structured format, right? In the case of SOAP, it should be in XML format. Do you know what is XML?
Extensive markup language.
So what is that? Like, what? Why do we use it?
Okay, so like we can send data
Yeah.
in XML format.
Yeah, so the person sharing the session with you gave you the right hint actually. So it is used to carry data from one place to another. So it's a data carrying language, right? XML is a data carrying language. Now, it can be transported over HTTP or SMTP, right? Now, as I said earlier, SOAP is the foundation of web services, right? So SOAP is the actual protocol which was the foundation of web services. So whenever you hear the term web service, understand that typically, we are talking about a SOAP-based service, but in essentially, a API is also doing the same thing, right? So we can also call that API is also a kind of web service, right? So what are the features of it? In SOAP, the XML structure that we follow is strict structure, right? So it is not loosely bound. If you will see when you will practice that, if you do a minor mistake of, let's say, when we create a SOAP envelope, we put tags, right? So if you just miss one tag, the whole thing will not work, right? It will just fail, right? So it is very strict in nature. It has built-in security features and reliable messaging features, which is essentially a part of SOAP, which makes it more robust, right? So as I was saying, there are entire frameworks built on just this. So WS security and WS reliable messaging are the built-in standards that it uses, and it is probably used a lot in places where strong security and transaction management are required, right? So now soap is slowly declined over the period of time. These days you rarely find soap services in the enterprise world, and the primary reason of that is the rise of RESTful APIs, right? So RESTful APIs are preferred for its simplicity, flexibility, right? We use JSON, and we use you know so for example, we have another protocol called OData. So OData underlying also uses REST, but then it has its just a bit of more flavor added to it. SAP's not particularly SAP, but it adds a flavor of Atom. It is called the Atom format, right? So it is built on JSON, but it's a slightly customized format of it, right? So that is the base of what we are going to cover today, right? So this is all about SOAP protocol. The iFlow that we are going to create today is going to be that we are going to create a CPI iFlow, and we'll have a SOAP adapter using request reply, which will make it synchronous. We'll call an external SOAP endpoint, get the response back to CPI, and of course, if we use Postman, it will receive the response back because it's synchronous. If you use any other sender, it will receive the response back. Okay, are we clear on the basics before we move to the demo part?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I actually did that in advance just to save some time, because and we'll try to do one together as well, because like I said, so format and operations and all of that fixing sometimes takes a lot of time. So I thought, let's do it in advance. So I'm using a free service called DNE Online Calculator.asmx. Right, so this is what we can use for this particular demo. So this one, what I'm doing here is very simple. I am not using Postman to trigger this. I'm using something called as timer, right? Did we use timer earlier before our demos?
In last time you told us about timer once, and in the
Hmm.
exercise also, first exercise was of
Yeah,
timer.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so you're familiar with it now, right? So
Yeah.
basically, timer is used to schedule an interface, right? So sometimes, like when we are for a client where a lot of interfaces will be running on a regular basis, if CPI is the trigger, we, as a best practice, we generally don't prefer it, because it increases operational overhead. You'll need people to monitor, right? So we typically avoid that, and we ask the sender of the information to trigger it, right? Uh, but there are, of course, cases where we have to use it, right? So in this case, when we are using timer, it is a default setting that I'm using, wherein it says schedule on deployment. So as soon as I will deploy it, it will trigger, right? Because otherwise, if I set a timer, then it will keep triggering it. So what I'm doing is, so let's show you the service first. Okay, so this is a simple calculator service, again with no authentication. It has four operations: add, divide, multiply, subtract. So now, as I was saying, XML is very, very strict in nature, right? So what essentially it does is, it has a set format, right? And it has something called as operations, right? So if I show you, so for each of the SOAP service, we will have something called as WSDL file, right? So what is a WSDL file? A WSDL file basically is, it will show you a structure or metadata, to be precise, of your service, right? So let me go to, yeah. So if you see, the URL just changed when I clicked on this. So it is now specifying a property, and the property is WSDL. Um, so if I'm not wrong, the full form is Web Service Definition Language. So it is specifying the detailed format of your service, wherein for each of the operations, what is the request structure, what is the response structure. For example, let's look at the add operation, right? So add operation is all a part of this, and then this is a request structure. So you need two parameters, wherein um, their name must be, when you use the service, int a and int b, and they specify minimum occurrence and maximum occurrence, and then you will have a response format. In the response, you will get something like this, right? So it's a set format. It is covering the metadata of each of the operations. So you have the service called calculator. Under it, you have four operations: add, subtract, multiply, and divide, right? So based on what you want to use, you will configure your adapter accordingly, and you will get the desired result. Okay, and so one more thing I wanted to show you is that in many of the cases, you will get let's say you are interacting with a client, right? You're talking to a client. I'll keep adding on these points because that is your true thing, right? If you gain knowledge, but if you don't know on the project how to interact with the third parties, then you'll be missing out. So just to give you a hypothetical scenario, that you are asked that this is a third party for which you need to with which you need to coordinate and build an interface. So and they have a soap service which you need to call, right? So what is the first thing that you will ask them? The thing is visual file. And then they may not even, that is, if you have a visual file, then you will have most of the information that you have, right? In case of soap adapter only, in the visual file towards the end, you usually have a URL. So this is the URL where of the service. I mean, you'll have two URLs because you will see in the soap adapter you have two variants. One is 1.1x and 1.2x, and accordingly you can choose the operation here. But uh, you know even if you will generate a visual file, you will see the same thing. So this is a like common thing, right? It's like idocs. If you work with idocs, it's a universal language. Okay, so clear about this service which we are going to use?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's get to our iFlow. I created a very simple iFlow wherein you have a start timer, you have a content modifier, then you have a request reply. Now, why I'm using a content modifier? Um, uh, to add a soap function. Okay, let me first show you the soap adapter. I think that is the most crucial part. So I added a soap adapter, same function, right? Like we typically do. I connect request reply with receiver, and I have a soap option amongst the many other options that we have. So I chose soap. In the soap, you have to fill these parameters, right? So what we do is I enter the address which is found in the visual file. Then the second step is either I can specify the URL to WSDL, which I just showed you, right? This URL. If I just go here, so this is the WSDL URL. Either you can specify this, or you can download this, right clicks and download, and then name the file. This is very important. Okay, just remember that when you are downloading, it shows as XML file. You need to do all files and make it a WSDL extension file, right? Otherwise, if you try to upload it, it will not recognize, like CPI will not recognize, right? And for that matter, any of the platforms which work with SOAP platform will not recognize it. Okay, so I mentioned the URL. This URL I found from here, right? And then URL to Visual I selected here. So I've already uploaded, but I'll just show you, right? So this is the one that I just downloaded. And notice it shows you the operations. So this is like a built-in feature because any platform, right now we're working with CPI, but any other platform recognizes how SOAP protocol works and how visual file behaves. So it will give you a choices. So if you see, you have total 8 operations showing here, right? The reason for that is, for this duplicity, is that the first 4 are SOAP version 1.1 and the second is SOAP version 1.2. So we can either choose one or two. This is, I mean, the only difference to that is obviously the latest version is added within some additional feature. But for our use case right now, even the basic one will work because it's a very simple use case. So I selected, let's say, add operation. So if you see, after I do this, right, these 3 fields will get populated automatically, and it's doing nothing but for this particular service, it is pointing me to the for this particular URL, rather web service, it is pointing me to the exact subservice, exact service that I'm using with on that URL, and the most importantly the operation, because based on this, the system will know. When I say system, the target service will know what operation it has to apply. Okay, now why do we specifically need to do it this way, right? Why can't we do it directly? Like, let's say if you use any other, if you use Postman, for example, right, you might not need to do all of this, right? So with this adapter, what CPI does is it builds an envelope. So let me show something. Again, if I go there in on this URL, let's look at the add operation. Okay, I clicked on add operation. Now it says that if you notice, let me just maximize it. So it has given you a sample payload, right? And for SOAP, we really need it, right? For SOAP services, because accordingly we can form our payload from our system, right? So if you see here, it shows you something called a SOAP envelope as well, right? XML version 1.0 encoding is UTF-8 SOAP envelope, and then it specifies namespaces, and then finally it says this is my SOAP body, right? So but I don't want to send all of this, right, from my CPI. My main purpose is just to tell you, okay, I want to do add, and I want to add on these two, or I want to do multiply or subtract, I want to do on these two numbers, right? So this envelope gets formed by using this adapter. Okay, if you see here, this is the message body I'm using, right? And then while it will pass through this, it will have a soap envelope. Okay, let's look at one quick test. Okay, um, as you can see, I've already done my share of errors today, so they're all green now. So and this is one of the reasons that I ask people to download CPI Helper at the first stage, because it makes debugging and learning very easy, right? So in this stage, obviously I don't have a body because my body is getting formed here. So this is not the right place to show. Let's go here. Okay. So you see the body is what we had written in the content modifier. Very simple. Add with namespace and then integer A, integer B. Okay. So, but the the platform says that I need to have the soap envelope as well to call the soap service, right? So now let's see now at this stage. Okay. Beautify. So now I have the response. Let me try to get the request as well. Okay, otherwise we'll have to go to the detail. Let's go to the detail. Oh yeah, I think unfortunately it's not showing me the intermediate stage because before so it is only showing me the response because yeah, because there's no step after it. Okay, let's but essentially, what happens is it converts it to the same format. Let me try once if I can show you that by doing some tweaking. Okay, in this I'll not do anything. I'll just deploy. Okay, okay, okay. It's still not going here. So let me add a property. Request request body. Yeah, no, I think before soap and after soap. Yeah, I think this will not work. But yeah, since it's an adapter, right? So in adapter, some of the things it is doing inside in intermediary steps, and as an output, it is just giving you. So had I access to this, let's say this service, right? If I had a service to access to this service, this server, if I can put some sort of a breakpoint there, then I can really show that okay, the payload will be converted here to this format because essentially it needs the envelope, right? And that envelope part is being solved by the adapter. That's what I was just trying to explain you. So since so what we can right now see is that this is your original body, but even if you see the response, let's oops, what's happening? So if you notice the response, right? So response has the full format, right? Which with the namespace in the operation, right? If you see here, right? So it's not just this, but it is also having these URLs alongside, right? So that is what I was trying to explain you. Okay,
And why it is showing the warning sign beside soap?
it is showing warning sign because let me show you. So it says content modifier may not pass XML message to SOAP on X receiver because SOAP receiver supports XML input only. Right. So it is so this is when you deploy it, right? So it is not really because this is static check. Okay. So this check is coming when you are deploying your iFlow, right? This is static check. It's not a runtime check, right? So it doesn't know that in my content modifier, I'm already having a pre-converted XML format. So let's say if I put some message mapping here, right, which will a message mapping in SAP, I mean BTP, the graphical mapping is always done in a XML format. In that case, this warning will go away. But right now, it's in the static mode. It is seeing the content modifier, so it is warning you that if your message is not XML, it may fail, right? Because it says SOAP 1x receiver supports XML input only, which we already know. Okay,
Yeah.
is this clear?
Yes.
Let's remove it because it's not solving any purpose. Okay, so if this one is clear, I will. So now let's spice up the demo a little bit. What I want to now do is that I want to make the operations dynamic, right? Right now it's always adding, right? So response we got was 15, if I'm not wrong, right? So because it was adding, right? So this is add result with your integer numbers. So this was the number 5 and 10, right? So let's. I mean, the real time scenarios are not always never this simple, right? So obviously we need to learn how to make it dynamic. So what we are trying to do here is I used Postman, right? So because if you want to make it dynamic, you need to get the input from outside, right? Because otherwise, there's no trigger to make it dynamic, right? Um, so as in done previously, also I used Postman here, and from the Postman we'll send a simple payload, right? And then what we'll try to do is we'll try to make it dynamic. Let's see how, right? So let me first show you a trigger. Let me make this dynamic. Sorry, trace on. So this is my this thing, um, the deployed iFlow. Oops, oh, there's already an error. Okay, no worries. We'll try to resolve it. Okay, so but first let me show you what we are trying to do here. Oh, 1 second. What is the error? Let me just quickly have a look. Just please check the binding operation and payload message. Okay. Okay, I think I need to remove it here.
So it means in the postman we will give if we have to multiply or add. Is it like
Yes,
that?
yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So I'm trying to make it dynamic using the Postman. You're right.
Mhm.
Okay, 1 second. Let me use this.
पापा
Close the door.
आपकी कॉल चल रही है
Hmm.
मुझे आपके साथ खेलना करके
हाँ थोड़ी देर में करते हैं बेटा.
इधर आओ
Oh, okay.
टिका चुका ओ मेरा
Okay.
टिका चुका
Ah, we're just looking for a static value. Okay, let me leave it like that. 1 second. Then we should be able to overwrite it. Let's see. Okay, so basically, and then we'll execute. Let me explain you as well. So we can create in this case. Let's say I want to make dynamic, right? So this sample payload I can create anything like which I like, because so this I created a very simple payload, right? Because ultimately this is not the final payload which is going to the my target, right? So I created a simple calculator request envelope and then under it operation integer a and integer b, right? Now what as a first step in this content modifier we do is we extract a value, right? So there is something called as xpath. So xpath is a very good, very useful thing in CPI because, like I said, in a lot of cases, we have to convert the payload, even if it is JSON, a REST-based service, right? It is coming in JSON to XML because that is a de facto within CPI, right? So using XPath, you can extract the value of a particular field within the XML payload. Right? For example, in this case, I want to extract operation. Right? So I did. This is my property name int b. I can give any name here. Source type is XPath, and the source value is double slash calculator request. So calculator request is our header parent, and then slash and then int b. Right. So if your value is deep, then you use double slash and then slashes, and then you reach the your property essentially, right? And then when you specify XPath, the specifying of the data type is mandatory. So, typically 99% of the cases we specify string. That's how we handle the inputs here.
So I did not understand why we are using double slashes here in the source.
That's like a syntax. Look at it like a syntax. In any language, there's a syntax, right? So to extract, I need the value of this. So typically, double slashes are used. Let's say if I want to use double slash int b, right? That should also work, right? But otherwise, it is like you're navigating a property. Right? Consider it as a syntax for now.
Okay.
Okay, and then after that, in the my second step, I form a body. Right? Remember, in the previous one, we had like add namespace and int a and int b. So here, to make it dynamic, instead of add, I did property dot operation. Int a is property dot int a, and int b is property dot int b. Right? That's how it will work. And then finally, of course, we are calling the same service again, right, with no change. So I think there's some issue here. I will try to see. Hopefully, we can resolve it on the same call on why it is failing. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, it's still failing. Let's see. Okay, what's the problem? Hmm. Okay, so this part is translating correctly. If you see, our payload is now forming correctly. This is all coming from the properties, the property int a, int b operation. So they are correctly being extracted. So this part is fine. So it says HTTP soap, HTTP header soap action. Okay, I think the value is not getting translated here. Okay, I have added the header somewhere. Okay, and it's happening too soon. That's why it is happening. Okay, no worries. So at the same stage we are extracting, I think it needs to be in the second content modifier. That is the problem because it is like a first line of code, and then in the same line of code we are using the extracted property, so it will not work. So let me copy this here. All right. Yep. Let's see. So like I was saying, see, the SOAP protocol is strict, and then we have to specify all properties alongside, right? So when I was trying earlier, what I was doing it in the same step. I was trying to extract the body. Set the body, not extract the body, and it was of course failing. Okay, now it started. Let's see. Hmm. Sometimes you. Okay. I think it's the same error. Why property operation is successfully extracted. Content type is good. Soap action. Oh, this property operation value is still not getting extracted. But I can see the operation value very well here. So what's the problem? Okay, okay. Soap action, soap action. Maybe that's not the right way to. Okay, let me see. I think I set it constant by accident. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. It needs to be expression. Hopefully this should work. Actually, it is good because the more errors you get during a demo, the more you learn, right? So, in a way, that's good. Okay, so we got the result, right? So, add result is 15, right? So, let's look at, let the trace come. Okay, so now, if you see the header, where is my header? So, this successfully translated, right? So, these are minor bits and pieces where obviously, you have to check all things finally. It's like different components, right? So typically, so in the platform that you work, is it like a pure coding platform or it's like a low code no code? I think you said you work in a MES something, right?
Yeah. It like we don't code much.
Ah,
Like
so yeah, so it's similar to this, right? So here also you will code very less, like only when we write do scripts, then you will code, right? So in such cases the elements are spread out in various places, right? So and then we have to be a little bit careful. If we miss a slight thing, then obviously it gives error, but as we do it on a regular basis, we get to learn those stuff. Okay.
so in this iFlow, the second content modifier, why are we using that? First
Hmm.
one is for getting the values,
Yes, and
and
the second one is
the
to make the
operation.
payload. Remember, the payload that we are sending from here is different from what the target service expects,
Okay.
because we are adding operation to make it dynamic, right?
Hmm.
But we cannot send operation as one of the elements here, otherwise it will fail, right? XML is SOAP is very strict in the format.
So in the postman only, are we not sending the operation? Calculate.
We are
We are
sending,
sending.
right?
Mhm.
So and because we are sending operation in the postman, we have to do this extraction of properties and then finally setting the operation here dynamically,
Okay.
right? So I mean,
Okay, I understood actually.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now a couple of important concepts that we learned here is, one is that obviously we saw the SOAP adapter, right, and the nitty gritties of it. It adds envelope to your payload to make it, um, the target service compliant. Then we also looked at the extraction of properties, right? So this is which you should practice well. I mean, you eventually when you do the demos, this will be a part of every demo. I mean, every exercise, most of the exercises, if not every exercise. So, like I was showing initially, right? Not just XPath, there are other things as well. So you should try to explore, right? So obviously, constant value is used a lot. Expression is used a lot. Header, sorry, global variable not so much, but it is also, when I'll show you what exactly a global variable is, right? So then a lot of other options, right? So even header and property. I mean, one property can be extracted from another property or header as well, right? So this is like in any language, this is like a variable, right? In CPI, you have multiple such options. One is property, which is very heavily used. So use of properties should be practiced very well. So and understood also very well. And then, like I was saying, and your question as well. So why we cannot set the body right here is it's like when we write a piece of code, right? Typically, how it works is, if I've written, let's say, 4 or 5 lines of code, the second line will only execute after the first line, right? So it is similar here. So if I write the body here with this expression, it will not be able to read it, because at the same stage the properties are getting extracted, right? It is not fully extracted. If you see, every stage it shows you what is happening right now, right? So that is the reason we did it in a second step, and we marked it as expression also. Remember, it was not working initially, and then I don't know whether we did it with you or before that. So constant, if you take it as constant, it will just send this exact body without changing any variable values, because constant is constant, right? So a basic concept. So that is what. So if I show you, let's look at this step by step thing once again. So at this stage there is no property, because like I said, CPI properties are a CPI concept. It's not a general integration concept. So at the first step it will always be empty. At the second step, sorry, at the first step, but the headers will be there, which are coming from your postman, right? And if you go to the next step now, at this stage, uh, you will have properties, because now you're within the CPS path. And again, we are not yet. So this is the same content modifier where we're extracting the property. But if you see right now, the properties are not extracted, because the code, when you click the traces, it says content before step, right? So trace is before step. Now after step, you can see after clicking on the next step, right? So now if you see, the properties are successfully extracted using XPath, int A, int B operation, right? And then headers we did not extract, right? Because we are setting the headers here now, right? So if I go to the next step, And see, now the soap action and the content type headers are set. Now also notice one more thing, okay? Um, so we saw the soap action, right? Now, but if you see here, we had put a specific hard-coded operation name add, right? But then um, if you are, and that is the reason of passing a header, right? So passing a header from here will actually overwrite that, right?
Yeah.
Clear so far?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Um, do we want to cover converter as well, or you think we should do it in the next class?
Yeah, anything is fine.
Okay. So I'll briefly mention it, but I think we will do a demo in the next class probably. So there is. So we have something called as converter in CPI as one of the palettes. So what converter does is it helps us to convert the format of the payload. Right, it has a very normal use case in CPI to convert the payload format, and a lot of times we use JSON to XML converter. So that was one of my plans to show you, because like I said, we are interacting. Most of the APIs that we use these days is JSON based, and in CPI, the message mapping, which we will cover later on, uses the XML format. Like when you use mapping, let me actually show you message mapping basically. Let me put it here. It's fine. Okay, so I think I need more than this, but let me try if it can accept the this. Okay, it will need a XST. That's fine. So I think yeah, I'll cover it in a demo, but just to let you know. So what I was trying to show you is, so when you put a message mapping, right, you need to put a schema to it. So typically, XSD schema is what we use for XML messages. So once you put a schema, you'll have a left and right hand side of the message mapping. And in the left, you'll have, of course, let's say your JSON body, and in the right, you'll have your um, not JSON body. Sorry, in the left, you'll have your source format, and the right, you have your target format. Right, both will be XML based. Right, so and then you need to let's say you want to use a message mapping, right? And obviously we will need to use message mapping. That is the whole point of using a middleware to orchestrate the message, meaning that you get a value x, you want to convert it to y, or you want to put some other calculation, so you need a message mapping. So for that we use I mean, if you have a JSON message, you need to convert it to XML. You have a standard built-in converter from SAP, which you can use, right? And also there are many cases where you can do that using Groovy script as well. Generally, that is considered uh, as the most go-to case, because standard sometimes does not work well. For example, if it's a deep structure, and if it's an array structure, for example, then sometimes standard does not work well. But otherwise, um, if it's a simple scenario, the standard converter works well. And what you need to do is you just need to configure it, right? So if you have seen a JSON format, I mean, of course you have seen, because we also have used, but if you understand it well, a JSON format is a very simple format. Where did you go? Like this, right? So it is a simple format with the if it's a straight structure, curly braces, and then the field values separated by commas. So instead of the colon here, for example, it could be multiple other things as well. In some platforms, they might be using comma, dot, pipe, or semicolon, or space. So based on what sample payload you have from source, you can select it accordingly. When you're converting from JSON to XML, like I was saying, right? So XMLs will have a root element like this. This is a root, which is like a envelope also. So let's say you in the JSON, you don't have that concept, right? JSON is typically simple. If this will be a JSON concept, JSON payload, I'll just have a curly braces start and end, and then I will use these values. But I want to add this envelope. So in that case, I will add this, that okay, add a XML root element with this name, right? And then XML uses namespace, so you can put a namespace as well, right? In this case, it is automatically recognizing that okay, XML NS namespace is mapped with p1, which is this particular URL, right? So that's all. So I mean, essentially it's a standard feature, so all we need to learn is how to use it. But the purpose of it is to convert a JSON value to XML in a standard way without doing any coding, right? And if you want to use a coding for the same, we can write a Groovy script which will convert this. Obviously we will cover that when we do the Groovy session, right? So let me park it here, because I will actually show you the demo, with a pre-prepared demo, and then we'll do something on the call as well. Okay,
Okay.
but just wanted to mention the concept so that you at least have something to take away, and then when we meet next, we'll